Today I'm gonna show you everything that I bought and cooked using just shy of 25 pounds worth of food from Lidl. And this will be enough to feed 2 people for lunch and dinner for the gist of a week. This here is everything that I bought for this week. So this turned into a pretty tofu heavy week. Although I'm not complaining, you might as well go for it whilst shopping at Lidl, since their tofu was one of the winners in my recent tofu off video. Anyway, so we've got a kilogram bag of white rice, a bag of macaroni, some cashew nuts, plain tofu, 2 blocks of marinated tofu. We will also need some smoked tofu, but they didn't have any in store this day. Then we have some soy milk, a kilogram of sweet potatoes, a can each of black beans, kidney beans and sweet corn, some broccoli, some bagels, a bag of bell peppers, 1 butternut squash, some whole wheat spaghetti, a bag each of basil and coriander, a 250 gram box of mushrooms, and then we've got a tub of hummus, an avocado, some garlic and some ginger. Now this came to a total of £20.51. However, we will also need the following items that I already had at home. So these include 2 cans worth of chickpeas, as well as that block of smoked tofu that I went back for the next day. And finally, we're gonna need some onions. So this adds another £3.72, making the grand total £24.23. This here is the full shopping list. You can pause the video here and grab a screenshot if you need to. I find it really helpful to have the price of the items listed when making a budget shop, just to ensure that I pick up the right item and I don't get overwhelmed by choice in the supermarket. And then, as a quick little disclaimer, if you will, I will also be including quite a few items that I deem to be pantry essentials. So these are things that you wouldn't necessarily be buying on a weekly basis, but things that will last in the fridge or in the pantry for a longer time. These are all items that will either help to enhance the flavors of the things that we're cooking, or in some cases the texture of what we're having. So basically just things that are good to have at home if you do a lot of cooking. So for this video, these items include the following: soy sauce, some olive oil, some form of vinegar, sesame oil, some jalapenos, nutritional yeast, vegetable stock, some chipotle paste, some breadcrumbs, some sugar, cornstarch, lemon and or lime juice, some form of sweetener, I'm using date syrup, black bean and garlic sauce, some white miso paste, some Dijon mustard, hoisin sauce, some tomato puree, as well as a selection of herbs and spices. So first up, we're gonna roast the butternut squash, 8 cloves of garlic, 1 onion and 2 or 3 bell peppers to split between our first 2 recipes of the week. So the first half of the butternut squash we're gonna use as part of comfort food at its finest. We're making a creamy cashew sauce mac and cheese. So for this one, we are going to cover some cashew nuts in hot water and leave these to soak for about 15 minutes. Whilst that is soaking, we will boil some macaroni, making sure to reserve some pasta water to use later on. Then to a blender, we will add some soy milk, the softened cashews, nutritional yeast for that cheesy flavor, some smoked paprika, cornstarch and thyme, some Dijon mustard and some miso paste, and then the roasted butternut squash and half an onion, as well as all of the roasted garlic cloves from earlier. And finally, we will add some lemon juice and some of that pasta water, which I only remembered to add in after the first blitz. To assemble, we will pour the cooked macaroni into an oven-proof dish. Pour the cheese sauce on top. I also added some salt and pepper at this stage. And then we will stir this around until everything is mixed together. And then we've got the optional extra step of adding a topping of panko breadcrumbs and some more nutritional yeast. And I never say no to extra carbs nor extra nooch, so I of course added this on. And then we'll pop this in the oven to bake for about 15 to 20 minutes until the breadcrumbs have gotten a bit golden. This is such a nice and comforting meal that is absolutely perfect for this time of the year. Comfort food, but also with some sneaky vegetables in there. I usually finish this off by adding a little drizzle of sriracha on top as well. With the other half of the butternut squash, we are going to make a warming soup to have with our bagels. For this one, we will start by sauteing some grated ginger and then just adding the roasted butternut squash, the bell peppers, and the other half of that roasted onion. We'll cover this with some vegetable broth, add some salt and pepper, and bring it all to a boil to heat through. Then we will blitz this with a hand blender until smooth. We will then serve this soup with a hummus-covered bagel. Also, a big thank you to Lidl for still selling hummus tubs that have actual lids on them. I'm all for reducing waste, but so many supermarkets seems to have sort of the wrong idea of where it's applicable to reduce plastic waste. For example, maybe you don't have to wrap every single piece of vegetable in plastic, but for things like your yogurt and your hummus, it would be nice if you could have the lid so that you can carry it home safely, and also you can actually store it for more than 2 days in the fridge without it getting like weird and crusty. Anyway, maybe that's just me. End of rant. Next up, we've got this very simple tofu and broccoli stir fry. So we'll be using about half the head of broccoli and all the plain tofu for this recipe. So we'll start by combining some cornstarch, some hoisin and soy sauce, sesame oil, some form of sweetener, I'm using date syrup here, lime juice, as well as grated ginger and garlic. And this will be our stir fry sauce. Then to a Tupperware with a lid, we will add some cornstarch, some garlic powder, thyme and salt, followed by the cubed tofu, and then we'll toss this so that all the seasonings and the cornstarch will be evenly distributed over the tofu cubes. We will then fry the tofu until it's starting to get golden on every side. Before adding in the broccoli. Once the broccoli has turned sort of a brighter shade of green, it is time to pour the sauce over. So we will leave this to thicken and coat everything for a couple of minutes, and then you can just serve this on a bed of rice. Nice, simple and green. With the other half of the broccoli, we are making a broccoli pesto to go with some crispy chickpeas and baked sweet potatoes. This dish is pretty nostalgic to me, as the first time that I ever had it was for a birthday many years ago, when some of my friends came over for a surprise visit and they had brought along all the ingredients for us to cook this meal together, which was very sweet of them. So for this one, we will start by covering our 2 cans worth of chickpeas with some ground cumin, some salt, some pepper and some paprika. We'll give this a drizzle of olive oil, and then we will shuffle this to the side and add our sweet potatoes cut in half, and then we will pierce each potato with a fork a couple of times to help the steam escape. Whilst these are all roasting away in the oven, we will start on that broccoli pesto. So to a food processor, we will add some cashew nuts instead of pine nuts, which is what the original recipe calls for, some olive oil, lemon juice, fresh basil, nutritional yeast instead of parmesan, some garlic powder, some salt and pepper, and finally we'll add the broccoli that I had boiled for about a minute beforehand. Then we'll blitz this until it comes out smoothish. Since I don't have a high-speed blender, the final pesto is definitely more on the chunky bits side of things, but it's still tasty. But I'll admit it looks nothing like it does in the original recipe's photo. And then to assemble, we'll just stack everything together on top of a potato and sprinkle with some chili flakes. Next up, we have a vegan take on a carbonara, and we're using mushrooms and smoked tofu. And this is yet another recipe from one of my favorite blogs, Lazy Cat Kitchen. So firstly, we are going to fry the mushrooms. In the original recipe, Anya marinates the mushrooms beforehand, but I tend to just add them to the pan as they are. Maybe this means that I should start a rival blog called Even Lazier Cat Kitchen. Except mine would of course have to be a dog kitchen. Anyway, the marinade is mainly just made from things that you're likely to already have at home, so I do recommend following the recipe in full, but it's also okay to be lazy. So I removed the mushrooms from the pan and then added the block of smoked tofu. Now, the smoked tofu isn't part of the original recipe, rather it is mentioned as a substitute for the mushrooms, so you could easily swap one for the other, but I like the combination of extra veg, extra protein, and I feel like the smokiness goes really well considering we're making a carbonara. Whilst this is on the go, you can start cooking your pasta, as we will be needing some of that pasta water for the carbonara sauce. I initially intended to use half of the leftover macaroni and then also some of the whole wheat spaghetti for this recipe. I ended up using only the macaroni, but the spaghetti is another option for you if you feel like you want to bulk the servings out a little bit. For the carbonara sauce itself, we are going to saute some garlic. Then we will be adding that aforementioned pasta water, some lemon juice and nutritional yeast. And then we will keep stirring this until it has emulsified. This one is definitely a trust the process kind of thing. To this we will then add some miso paste and cornstarch that has been diluted into about a cup's worth of soy milk. And voila, by some magic, that is your carbonara sauce. We will then add the spaghetti and the mushrooms and or smoked tofu. And of course, what is a carbonara without a very generous serving of black pepper? So simple and so tasty. Our sixth recipe is for a burrito bowl. Now this one was meant to be with butternut squash, but I swapped these around for more sweet potatoes that I cut into half moon shapes, drizzled with some oil, smoked paprika and chili flakes, and then popped them in the oven to roast. I also threw the sweet corn into a small tin to roast at the side of this at the same time. And this was basically so that I wouldn't have to fry them and watch them over the stovetop. Because in my one frying pan on the stovetop, we are making refried beans. For this one, we will start by sauteing an onion and then adding some garlic, spices like smoked paprika, cumin, chipotle paste and tomato puree. We'll give this a swirl around the pan. I also added a splash of water to ensure that nothing would burn. Then we will add our kidney beans and our black beans, a splash of vinegar and another little bit of water before leaving this to cook down for about 15 minutes. As you're cooking, you can also squash the beans with the back of the spoon just to turn it into a bit more of a creamier texture. Instead of making avocado crema as the recipe suggested, I made this little salsa-y thing, combining some diced avocado, some fresh coriander, pickled jalapenos, salt and lime juice. And then once the sweet corn was ready, I drizzled some lime juice on top and also a drizzle of sriracha. Then it's simply a matter of assembling all of this over a bed of rice. I really enjoyed this combination of flavors. So we've made it to the final meal of the week, depending on what order you would choose to make these, of course. We are using the whole wheat spaghetti as noodles in this stir fry with marinated tofu, bell peppers and cashew nuts. So this here is the very same 5-spice stir fry sauce that I used in a video a couple of weeks ago. I mentioned then that this used to be a regular in our weekly rotation, and then we just stopped making it for a couple of years. But I guess this might be a sign that the stir fry sauce is now back in rotation. So this footage is actually just reused from last time I made this as well. You don't have to prepare this in a saucepan, you could just throw it all together in a mug as well, which is what I did this time. For the stir fry sauce, you'll simply combine some vegetable stock, some vinegar, some soy sauce, sugar and 5-spice, black bean garlic sauce and some cornstarch to act as a thickener. Whilst the pasta is cooking, we will start sauteing our tofu. I decided to cut these into strips for some reason. I guess just to have a different shape of tofu on the menu this week. Once the tofu has started catching a bit of color, we can add the remaining bell peppers and an onion to the pan. Stirring and frying this, which is indeed what makes it a stir fry. We will then add our sauce, leaving this to thicken for a couple of minutes and then adding the cooked spaghetti into the mix. I almost forgot that this is a golden opportunity to add a sprinkle of cashew nuts. Luckily I remembered last minute, but these are even tastier if you add them in the pan a bit earlier to let them roast slightly and get coated in the sauce. That is everything for today. We've managed to get another 28 servings of food for less than £1 per serving. If you're looking for more budget inspiration meals, I have previously made 2 videos very similar to this where I go shopping at Tesco and at Aldi with a similar budget. I'm thinking if I should be brave enough to try doing this with like M&S or Sainsbury's, but we shall see. If you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, and as always, thank you so much for watching.